Apollo 1 fire. Apollo was supposed to be NASA's triumphant mission to the moon. Instead, it started with one of the darkest days in space history when a routine test in 1967 went horribly wrong. The Apollo 1 capsule was lined with Velcro and nylon netting, designed to secure its cargo, and filled with pure oxygen, allowing the crew to breathe while inside the capsule. When a damaged wire caused a spark in the cabin, the highly flammable materials inside ignited. The fire spread instantly, turning the spacecraft into a death trap for its crew. The Apollo capsule's main crew hatch was designed to open inward, which meant the increasing cabin pressure from the fire made escape impossible. By the time the ground crews got it open, all 3 astronauts were dead. NASA's official review board spent months investigating the disaster. What they found was damning. Once again, engineers had warned them about the deadly combination, but once again, nobody listened. NASA completely redesigned the Apollo capsule after that, switching to a safer atmosphere, substituting the flammable materials for less flammable ones, and installing a new outward opening hatch. Unfortunately, it took 3 astronauts' lives for the engineering department to get a little respect. The Challenger disaster. On January 28, 1986, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Challenger despite more warnings than the dashboard of a 2006 Kia Sorento. What most people don't know about the Challenger disaster is that engineers had spent the night before the launch desperately trying to stop it from happening. The problem? The rubber O-rings sealing the rocket boosters were known not to provide the seal they were intended to under the extreme conditions of a rocket launch, and were especially prone to failure in cold weather. The temperature on the morning of Challenger's launch was forecast to reach temperatures well below freezing. During a late-night teleconference, engineers presented their case and recommended against the launch. Their management initially agreed, but after a second meeting, the decision was reversed and the launch would proceed as scheduled, despite the warnings. 73 seconds after liftoff, the cold, stiffened O-ring failed exactly as predicted. While initial reports suggested instant destruction, later investigations revealed the crew cabin survived the breakup, and some crew members remained conscious during the nearly 3-minute fall. NASA kept this information quiet for months. An investigation revealed the team at NASA had known about O-ring problems since 1977. Even though the space race was officially over, NASA was still operating under the same launch at all costs mentality that defined the 1960s. Only now, instead of racing the Soviets, they were racing their own schedules and budgets. Vladimir Komarov's doomed mission. In 1967, Soviet cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov was selected to command Soyuz 1, a spacecraft that was less reliable than a McDonald's ice cream machine. Soyuz was meant to be the Soviet Union's next leap in the space race, following their successful Vostok and Voshchod missions. Komarov's flight would be the first test of this new spacecraft. Engineers repeatedly warned of serious problems with its design and manufacture. Despite the warnings, Soyuz 1 was cleared for launch. The mission went wrong faster than pineapples on a pizza. Solar panels failed, navigation died, and the vessel's radio went dark. Against all odds, and after orbiting the Earth 18 times in his flying coffin, Komarov managed to point the craft toward the planet and re-enter its atmosphere. Then came the final betrayal. The parachutes responsible for slowing Soyuz descent didn't open. Soyuz hit the ground at speeds up to 40 miles per second. The crash left almost nothing of Komarov or his spacecraft. Thankfully for future cosmonauts, the laundry list of problems that plagued Soyuz was fixed. It only took one brave soul hurtling toward the Earth at Mach speeds for anyone to listen. The Nedelin Catastrophe. When it comes to rushing deadlines, most people just end up with sloppy work. In 1960, the Soviets ended up with something much worse when they rushed to test their new intercontinental ballistic missile. The R-16 missile was the Soviets' answer to America's nuclear arsenal. With pressures mounting internally to demonstrate the USSR's missile capabilities, the Soviets tasked one of their military commanders, Mitrofan Nedelin, with carrying out the demonstration. Nedelin was determined to succeed even if that meant ignoring every safety protocol in the book. On October 24, 1960, dozens of technicians were working to prepare the R-16 for its launch, when a short circuit fired up the engines at the wrong time. The blast turned the launch pad into an inferno of toxic flames and claimed as many as 150 lives. Since the R-16 was part of their secret nuclear missile program, the Soviets covered up the entire disaster. They told families their loved ones died in a plane crash and kept the truth hidden for 3 decades. While the space race pushed both sides to reach for the stars, parallel missile programs like the R-16 showed the more intentionally explosive side of the era's rocket development. The lost Apollo 11 tapes. Picture the most important video you've ever filmed. Now imagine recording over it with your trip to the DMV. That's basically what happened to the original Apollo 11 moonwalk recordings. The original signals were recorded on special data tapes at receiving stations in Australia and California, and then they vanished. In the early 1980s, NASA had a problem. They were facing a severe shortage of the magnetic tapes they used to record satellite data. In response, the team at NASA resorted to recording over old tapes, including the ones containing one of humanity's greatest achievements. The truth didn't come out until 2006. NASA went as far as bringing engineers from the time out of retirement to help track down the missing tapes. They searched for 3 years, but in 2009, NASA admitted defeat. The tapes were gone, erased and reused decades earlier, and doing absolutely nothing to quiet moon landing skeptics. Skylab's near disasters. America's first space station got off to the kind of start that would make even the most disastrous home reno project look smooth. Skylab was meant to be humanity's first long-term home in space, a place where astronauts could live and work for months at a time. Things got off to a turbulent start, with atmospheric forces ripping away Skylab's protective shield just 1 minute into launch. Without the sun shield, temperatures inside Skylab soared. The $2.5 billion station was effectively turned into the world's most expensive solar oven. The shield took one of the main solar panels with it, crippling the station's power supply. 11 days after Skylab's disastrous launch, the first crew blasted off, packed with hastily designed tools and repair materials. While their repairs kept Skylab operational for several years, the station's streak of bad luck wasn't over. In 1979, Skylab came crashing back to Earth, spreading its debris across the Australian outback. The lost cosmonauts theory. The USSR's Yuri Gagarin was famously the first human in space, but according to some conspiracy theorists, he might have just been the first one to make it back alive. In the early 1960s, 2 Italian brothers claimed they'd picked up disturbing radio transmissions from secret Soviet space missions. Their recordings allegedly captured the final moments of cosmonauts during failed launches that the USSR simply erased from history. And the brothers weren't alone. In 1959, an alleged high-ranking Czechoslovakian communist leaked information about several supposed cosmonaut deaths. When Western reporters tried to verify the claims, the Soviets provided photos of the allegedly dead cosmonauts, very much alive and working as test pilots. After the fall of the Soviet Union, researchers got access to previously classified files. No evidence ever surfaced of secret deaths in space. Though the theory was debunked, it spawned decades of speculation about what else the space programs might be hiding. After all, if the Soviets could cover up the Nedelin disaster for 30 years, who knows what other secrets never made it back to Earth? Project A119. In 1958, at the height of the space race, the United States Air Force came up with what might be the most audacious scientific proposal ever, Project A119. Their mission, to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon, targeting the moon's terminator, the line between the light and dark sides, making the explosion visible to everyone on Earth. Why would anyone consider such a drastic plan? After the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957, America was desperate to show off its own space capabilities. They settled on using a W-25 warhead, a relatively small nuke, about 1/8 the size of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The project brought together some remarkable minds, including a young Carl Sagan, who worked on predicting how nuclear explosions would behave in the moon's low gravity. By January 1959, the Air Force came to their senses and cancelled the project. The project remained secret for over 40 years, until the year 2000, when Leonard Reifel, the project's leader, finally revealed its existence. Looking back, he expressed horror that such a plan was ever considered. Thankfully, in the end, America decided landing on the moon would be a better idea than blowing it up.